Alright, so this is going to be a response to a girl who claims to be trans, who's a transgender, and so she's accurately been called out as a transgender, and apparently she's trying to take the word back, like trying to use it, as an endearing term, but the whole point of it is that it is by definition derogatory because it implies that you're not really trans. So she's basically going like, yeah, I'm not really trans, of course I'm not really trans, I just pretend to be trans. So let's just get into the video.
You are a transtrender, not transgender. I was called a transtrender, guys! I made it! I'm transtrender! I'm a transtrender! I've made it! Hi, I'm Brenna Beckwith, and this is the Brenna Beckwith video blog. Transtrender. I've been meaning to make a video about this for a very long time, so let's get right into this word. Transgender is a word with a negative connotation that came about right around the time where words like gender fluid, gender nonconforming, non-binary started coming up.
Stop conflating those things, because gender fluid and non-binary are things that have no evidence behind them. Gender nonconforming means that you're a man or a woman, but you just don't conform to gender roles. But you're trying to say that's a separate gender, and you're not just gender nonconforming. I mean, she's not even gender nonconforming. She's clearly very feminine. She has women's clothes. She has a female haircut. She's showing off her cleavage. There's absolutely nothing masculine about her. This girl, I think, is even more feminine than Milo or Quinn B or Stewart. I just find it very funny that she's trying to imply that she's some kind of third gender, that she's trans, because she's clearly not.
Also known as transgender identities other than male to female and female to male. I've talked about this a few times. I personally identify as gender nonconforming or genderqueer, and I have been called a transgender quite a lot.
I wonder why.
The word transgender is meant to invalidate my identity and anyone who identifies as something other than male to female or female to male.
Yes, because there's no evidence for that right now, but I don't think it's even necessary that you identify as non-binary. It's more that you're clearly not trans in any way and you identify as trans. Which is horrible behavior, by the way, because you're co-opting a medical condition.
Like I said. And Google defines it as someone who identifies as transgender just because it's trendy, not because they're really transgender, is purely a word meant to invalidate, dehumanize.
No, it's not dehumanizing anyone, but it is used to call out people who are co-opting a medical condition. It's not some word that you can take back or anything, because it is by definition insulting. How can you use that as an endearing term without it being insulting and implying that you're not really trans?
Scrutinize and just make fun of people who identify as something other than male or female or something other than transgender. That's basically where the word comes from. That's basically why the word is used. So transgender basically means that you identify as transgender because you think it's cool and because you think it's trendy. I mean, it's basically saying that you wake up and you know what? I want to have an identity that is widely misunderstood, and I feel like being persecuted and invalidated, and you know what? I really want my human rights violated today.
How are transgenders getting their human rights violated? What, people calling you a girl and disagreeing with you on the internet? That's your human rights being violated? That identity is not misunderstood. You're being called out for pretending to be trans. That is what it is. Stop trying to co-opt the struggles of people with a real medical condition.
Ugh. Gonna be a bad day. And that's just not what happens.
Then what does actually happen? Explain that to me, because I'm assuming you don't have dysphoria. So, what does actually happen?
Coming out and identifying as gender nonconforming is just as hard as coming out as transgender or gay or bi or anything else.
No, it's not. Stop co-opting this stuff. Stop it. It is not nearly as hard as coming out as those things. It's saying that you don't conform to gender rules is not nearly such as big of a thing as having a different sexual orientation or being trans. It's not nearly, it doesn't even come close. So stop comparing the two. Nobody cares if you don't conform to gender rules. What I do care about is when you claim to be trans because of it.
It it takes a lot of time. If anything, it's harder to come to terms with it because it is so new and it is so strange to feel.
If it's so strange, how about you don't identify that way? How about you just accept that you can just be a girl who doesn't conform to gender roles? Or in your case, a girl who does conform to gender roles?
It's so strange to feel gender queer, and so coming to terms with that is incredibly hard.
How is it harder? How's it harder? You're not transitioning. You're not doing anything. So how's it harder? What, because people disagree with you on the internet? Oh, poor you. You must live such a hard life. I guess that's just on the same level as injecting hormones in your body and getting surgery. Yeah, never mind that trans people actually have to go through those things.
And it's definitely not something that you want for yourself. You're gonna go through life and life's just gonna be a little bit harder. Like, that's it. Life is just going to be a little bit harder if you identify as gender non-conforming. You're constantly misgendered.
How are you misgendered? You're clearly a girl. You present as a girl. If you don't want to be quote-unquote misgendered, then how about you don't present as a girl? And again, you're saying that gender non-conforming is its own gender. No, gender non-conforming literally just means you don't conform to gender roles. How does that have anything to do with being trans or some kind of a gender that requires different pronouns for some reason?
You're constantly misunderstood. You're constantly persecuted.
How are you being persecuted? How? Explain to me how you're being persecuted. These people just go from 0 to 100 so fast. How are you being persecuted? How?
You're constantly looked down upon. And to add on to that, you're called things like transgender. Who would want to identify as something that's persecuted if they weren't really that thing? It's just another term that invalidates new identities that are coming out.
Well, then why is it so new then? Transgenderism has always been around. So why have these just crawled out of the woodwork just now? Why have they just been invented? You admit that they've been created. You admit that they've been invented. And not by any medical professional or anybody who deals with these kind of medical conditions, but by somebody who's a special snowflake. Like, how are they valid in any way?
My point is, just because it's a new identity, it's a term that you've never heard before, it's a term that's just been created to kind of match the way that some people feel, doesn't mean it's a non-existent term, doesn't mean it's not how we feel, and it definitely doesn't mean that we just decided to make up this term so we could be special or that we could feel trendy.
Then what did you make up that term for?
Because there's nothing trendy about being invalidated at every turn. And finally, about the word transgender, I think we need to take it back.
This is the cringiest part of it. How do you take it back? How? How is that even possible? How can you use that in an endearing way? I mean, I understand with other terms, yeah, but transgender implies that you are not really trans. So you're just gonna outright admit that you're not really trans.
I think the gender non-conforming community should and is beginning to take back the word transgender. Like so many negative derogatory terms before it, we're gonna take this word in stride and we're gonna turn it into something incredibly positive. Transgender. Words are just words. The only meaning that they have is the meaning that you assign to them. So I've decided to see the word transgender and smile. And I'll just think of it as another product of this growing queer language that we are building for ourselves.
Okay, so she just starts promoting herself and doing like stuff like that at the end of the video, so I'm just gonna end the video here. So I don't understand how she intends to take back the word transgender, because you can't really take it back without showing your complete lack of self-awareness. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy this video, and as always, thanks for watching.
Feel the funk blast!